Edson Barboza, now 12 UFC wins, might have the greatest highlight reel in the history of this lightweight division, at least, which is just so amazing. And I think for a lot of people, we've seen him grow up, Kenny, in the UFC. He was 6-0 when he debuted in the UFC in 2010. He's been at this forever, and he's still getting better. I mean, I think he was losing this fight to Beneil Dariush, but man, did he not lose it in the end. Big moment for Edson Jr. Barboza, obviously, over the weekend.
Edson is, as they say, a motherfucking problem because, I mean, his speed is just something to behold, man. I don't get it. It's not even fair how fast this guy moves. But I got to say, listen, I thought Dariush fought a phenomenal round one. I actually had Dariush winning that round. I thought the fact that he was pressuring Barbosa was giving Edson some trouble. You could see that Edson really didn't settle down until round two. And once he got in his rhythm, man, it was a big time problem for Dariush. And I thought Dariush fought a great fight. If you're going to shut down a kicking game, if you're going to shut down speed, I thought he did everything he possibly could in round one. But he was getting a little tired. I think those leg kicks were affecting him a little bit in round two as well. So he started to slow down. And once Barbosa got comfortable, he just started unleashing hell. And it was just amazing to see him eat the jab and go, all right, I'll trade you a jab for this knee. And it took out Dariush in an instant. Just amazing to watch. And I tell you what, that guy is a terrible matchup for the lightweight champ, Conor McGregor. He is an amazing striker. I think his speed, his ability to strike, and his ability to not really throw himself off balance too much like he used to, I think makes him a very, very tough matchup for Conor McGregor.
So I'm
not saying he's going to get that. I'm not saying he's going to get that shot right now, but I'm saying style-wise, that's a problem.
Well, he's certainly positioning himself. Obviously, there's a logjam at 155 pounds now. I was going to ask you if you think Edson Barboza can be champion because here he is now 19-4, right? The losses, at least in the UFC, Jamie Varner, Donald Cerrone, and Tony Ferguson.
Yep.
It seems like Barboza's sort of painted with the brush of a guy who has a suspect chin. I know there's the Varner TKO loss, but it held up on this night. I thought Dariush had the right approach. I know you do. Brian Stan did. It's interesting, actually. Damian Maia, and I want to get back to Barboza in a second, but Damian Maia just said, if I'm coaching Beneil Dariush, he said this to me in the van on the way back to the hotel. He said, if I'm coaching Dariush, I'm finding a way to take that guy down. And I think there's an argument on both sides, right? Because you're playing with poison, as Dariush was, and he was willing to get knocked out, and he got knocked out, right? He got a lot done. He was winning the fight. But I think to outlast Edson Barboza on the feet over 15 minutes strategically has some holes in it, too.
Well, I think he got a little impatient. And here's the problem. And this is why I'm a little nervous for George St. Pierre when he gets back. A double leg isn't what it used to be. And a lot of fighters are going to be willing to make that trade and say, listen, you might be able to take me down, but I'm going to throw a knee as you come in. And it's just one of those things. Dariush was looking for the takedown there, but I think it's a very unsafe option going for a double leg these days, especially against a fast and dangerous striker like Edson Barboza. I think Khabib Nurmagomedov has a much better recipe for the takedown for two reasons. First of all, it's safer getting to the clinch in that 50-50 clinch. And if you're able to secure a takedown, if you're able to get a takedown from that 50-50 position and get on top, you have much better control. Whereas on the singles and the doubles, you see guys get taken down, and guys are popping right back up. They're getting their head up, they're posting their hands on the mat, and they're getting right to their feet. You can't really do that on a throw from 50-50 like Khabib Nurmagomedov hits. So I think that Dariush did his best to get to a clinch. He was using more of a tie clinch as opposed to a wrestling clinch, and that's kind of where the problem lies. Obviously, much easier for me watching to analyze what he needed to do. But I think it's just a safer option. Getting to that 50-50 clinch against a fast striker like Edson Barboza, it's not an easy thing. But certainly taking a risk and going for the single or double is even more dangerous.
That is very interesting and spot-on analysis. So Anthony Pettis, Gilbert Melendez, Beneil Dariush, last 3 victims for Edson Barboza. I was going to ask you if you think he can be champion, because this win and the nature of the win with, the flying knee knockout really does position him nicely at 155. He's unbeaten since the loss to Tony Ferguson, obviously, which proved to be a difficult matchup, and I think Ferguson might be the best 55er in the world right now. Khabib obviously is there, and Conor is lurking as the champion. What do you think's next for Barboza, and can he be the UFC champion if things fall according to plan?
I really think he can. I think he beats. I think he can beat Dos Anjos. Well, Dos Anjos is now going to fight at welterweight, but he's currently number 4. I think he beats Alvarez. And I truly think this. I think that if he's able to stop the takedown game of Ferguson, I really think he's the better striker. We saw Ferguson take a lot of damage in that Barbosa fight.
Yeah.
I think Ferguson did. Obviously is just a killer and just would not stop moving forward. And I think Barbosa kind of folded to that pressure a little bit, got tired, and Ferguson just kind of outlasted him and caught him on the ground. And Nurmagomedov, I think he's the toughest style matchup for Barbosa, but Barbosa's wrestling is looking much, much better. I think on the feet, I think he beats all of those guys. And yes, I do think he can be a champion. The way he matches up against McGregor right now, I think that's McGregor's probably toughest striking matchup right now. Maybe, Conor's a phenomenal boxer. I think he's probably a little bit cleaner of a boxer, but he's not as fast and he's not as powerful as Edson Barboza.
Barboza will probably have to win at least one fight to realize the Conor fight. Michael Chiesa is a name that's out there, a guy he hasn't fought. That's really the only name that makes sense. He's not going to get a fight with Nate Diaz. I wouldn't think that would get Diaz out of bed. And I think he fought Michael Johnson before. So we'll see what they do with Barboza, but a big, big weekend for him. And obviously what a pleasure to, watch him perform as usual. Ray Borg with a big win over Jussier Formiga. He's in position now at 125 pounds. Alex Oliveira, strong. I think strength was the big takeaway. Just very, very strong kid, and maybe technically, leaves a little bit to be desired in this fight and in previous ones, but a big win for him in the rematch against Tim Means. What do you think about Kevin Lee at 155 pounds, Kenny? I mean, this kid's a beast, can do it all, and I like the fact that he lost the first round, dealt with some adversity and still came back to end what was a 7-fight win streak for the 38-year-old Francisco Trinaldo.
I agree, man. I think Kevin Lee is going to learn a lot from that fight against Trinaldo. Trinaldo is a very tough out. I think he was just outside of the top 10, I believe. So great win for Kevin Lee. I think he's going to learn a lot from that fight. He did make some mistakes. I think we saw him get hurt on the feet a little bit, but he's certainly a guy with a heck of a lot of potential. I think he's a guy who's been calling out a lot of different fighters. The fact that he's calling out Khabib Nurmagomedov already, I think shows the kind of confidence that this kid has. I don't know of anyone who actually wants to fight Khabib Nurmagomedov. No one's calling his name out, that's for sure.
Well, I'm told all the Russians want to kill him, so maybe he'll get one of them.
At this point, after not making weight, that's true. But yeah, man, I was impressed with Kevin Lee. I think he has a bright future for sure.
Joe Soto painting the canvas with blood, donating pints over the weekend after the headbutt against Rana Yaya. I had to watch this back when I got home. And by the way, my twin brother, all he cares about are bloody fights. I got to get him on Fight Pass to watch Shirk Florian, obviously. But he loves the bloody fights. Those are the fights that really get him going, so obviously he was excited to see this type of fight play out. These guys fought 9 minutes under these conditions, and having watched it back, I think I underestimated on the call just how much the headbutt affected Rana Yaya. I mean, we talked about it progressively as the fight went on, but when you go back and watch that clash of heads, it was a knockdown. He got knocked down.
Yes. He got hurt for sure. It rocked him. And obviously it was his opponent who had to deal with all the blood, Joe Soto. And I think it really did kind of wake him up a little bit. It got the nasty out of Joe Soto. He realized he was going to fight. And those guys were essentially fighting to the death. I mean, that was like a movie fight. These guys really brought it. I thought that was probably the fight of the night for me. And a lot of great back and forth action. Joe Soto's ability to scramble was just awesome to watch, and that's where Yaya shines really. But Joe Soto was just beating him on the scramble. And again, if Yaya was able to pace himself and get himself in shape for 3 hard rounds, I thought he would have won the fight. It was just his conditioning failed him again. It was unfortunate, but Joe Soto just showed how tough he is, man. What a fight.
You know, Brian Stan tweeted that if they did a fight card of just the lightweights, and I know you're going to love this idea, obviously, as a former UFC lightweight title challenger a couple times. But when you look at this division, right, Michel Prazeres is 22-2. Man. You know, he's 22-2. And at 6 or 7-2 in the UFC, and finally got the finish, obviously, that he needed, and it was a pretty one north-south choke against Joshua Berkman. I think only the 4th north-south choke in UFC history. But this is a guy whose previous 7 or 8 fights in the UFC had gone the distance, and he needed a finish to not just cap the run, but to make any sort of headway when it comes to the lightweight rankings. Like Prazeres, Kevin Lee, these guys are unranked, Kenny, you know, and they're accomplishing great things. And Prazeres maybe doesn't have championship ceiling, but again, just another guy at 155 pounds who on any given Saturday night can beat guys in this top 10.
Well, you know, in trying to look for a weakness in Prazeres' game, I'm not sure I can really find one, to be honest. I mean, the guy can wrestle. He's an excellent striker, and he seems to be very knowledgeable on the ground with his submission game. So, yeah, I don't know. I mean, this guy is a definite problem for a lot of people. The first time I saw him fight at 170 pounds, or was it 170 or 185 when we called one of his fights? But anyways, he looked good there. And I think it was a UFC debut where it was on relative short notice. So he's a beast, man. I think Prazeres is another guy that you need to have your eyes on. And yeah, that division has been stacked for a very long time. But if you're in the lightweight division right now in the UFC, good luck, man. It's just a row of killers all the way up to probably the 50th guy in that division. It's just it's amazing.